Hello, everybody. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening for everyone. We are very pleased to welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you very much for your interest and for taking the time to join us today. We are especially encouraged by the strong global response. We had over 400 registered. I hope the participants will be at that number also from 53 countries over across the 6 continents just last week. This wide international participation reflects both the relevance of our topic and the shared commitment that brings us together. We are delighted to have you with us and look forward for a thoughtful and engaging session. I'm Father Musa from the Coptic Orthodox Church. I was trained to be a physician and a general surgeon and then stressed on biological ethics. Today, I am an ordained priest in the Coptic Orthodox Church ministering in a parish in Paris. I'm honored to serve as a co-chair of the Faith and Science Working Group of the Commission of the Churches on Health and Healing. This commission is moderated by Reverend Dr. Stavros Kofinas, and he is joining us, and he will be presenting words. Reverend Stavros Kofinas is the moderator of the commission, and he's a proto-presbyter of the canonical throne of the Greek Orthodox Church within Athens, and he's known for his leadership in pastoral health care and Christian bioethics. He brings greetings from the commission of the council commission to you all. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father Musa. On behalf of the Committee for Health and Healing of the World Council of Churches, I warmly welcome you to this webinar on the risk of artificial general intelligence and how should faith communities respond. I am deeply grateful for your presence, especially the members of the committee, the scientists, the health professionals, the ethicists, the theologians among us, and representatives of churches joining from all over the world. Your participation reflects something essential. The questions raised by artificial general intelligence are no longer theoretical. They already affect health systems, research, governance, and the daily lives of our people in many communities. I would also like at the outset to acknowledge the excellent and sustained work of the work group of science and faith of our committee. Over time, this group has created a space of serious, respectful, and informed dialogue between scientific expertise and theological reflection. Today's webinar stands firmly within that tradition, one that refuses both simplistic answers and false oppositions, and instead insists on depth, responsibility, and mutual listening. We stand at a threshold moment. Artificial intelligence, particularly the emerging prospect of artificial general intelligence, holds remarkable promise. In healthcare, we see tools that enhance diagnosis, improve research capacity, assist clinical decision-making, and potentially expand access to underdeveloped and underserved populations. These developments should not be dismissed lightly. At the same time, the scale and autonomy envisioned in advanced AI systems raise profound concerns. Questions on accountability, bias, inequality, surveillance, displacement of labor, and concentration of power are not peripheral, they are central. Beyond these lie deeper anthropological questions. What does it mean to act responsibly in a world where decisions may be increasingly shaped by systems that we do not fully understand? What becomes a human agency? How do we safeguard dignity when persons risk being reduced to to data and predictive models. For the churches, these are not merely technical matters. They are theological and ethical questions. They touch our understanding of the human person as created in the image of God, something that this work group has always stressed, endowed with freedom, relationality, and moral responsibility. They challenge us to consider how power is exercised, how vulnerability is protected, and how justice is pursued in rapidly evolving technological landscapes. The title of today's webinar speaks of risk. Risk should not lead us into fear or reactionary rejection, nor should it lead to uncritical enthusiasm. Rather, risk calls for discernment. Discernment demands humility before complexity, careful listening to scientific expertise, and attentiveness to those most vulnerable to unintended consequences. It requires us to ask not only what is technologically possible, but what is ethically justifiable and socially life-giving. In the field of health, this responsibility is especially acute. AI systems may shape how resources are allocated, how diagnoses are prioritized, how treatment pathways are designed. If poorly governed, they may reinforce iniquities and obscure accountabilities. If wisely guided, they may support more inequitable and effective care. The difference lies not in technology alone, but in the moral frameworks and governance structures that accompany it. Faith communities, therefore, have a vital role. This is why this webinar is so important. We do not gather here to only question, we gather as moral communities called to witness to human dignity, to solidarity, and to the primacy of life, understood not simply as efficiency and productivity, but as communion, meaning, and hope. And today's conversation is part of that large call to be able to address these issues. May it deepen our understanding, shapen our discernment, and help churches engage in this emerging reality with wisdom, courage, and care. Thank you for your commitment for this important work. Thank you for your work on the committee. I look forward to the insights that will emerge from our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Stavros, for all your encouraging and nice words and insights. Thank you very much for the insights. I would like also to introduce Peter Kunret, my co-chair. You always know him. You have got in contact with him, and he is a co-chair of the working group for health and healing, science and faith and science on the Commission of Health and Healing. He is originally an evangelical Lutheran in Canada. He's a medical doctor, physician, family physician, and ordained minister. And he will be our moderator today. I hope we are going on the times. Otherwise, the moderator will say stop afterwards. Thank you, Peter. I will start now by the panelists in the order of their speech, starting with Dr. Max Tegmark, a Swedish-American physicist, cosmologist, futurist, and the president and co-founder of the Future of the Life Institute, an organization dedicated to existential risks and advanced technology, including artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nuclear weapons. He's also a professor of the Massachusetts Institutes of Technology and the author of several books in this field, such as Life 3, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence in there. Dr. Tegmark's work emphasized long-term safety, ethical governance of AI, international collaboration to ensure that technological progress benefits humanity while minimizing existential risks. Through his research, writing, and public engagement, he encourages global dialogue on how we can responsibly shape the future of intelligent technology. Thank you, Doctor, for your presence and for the words to come. The following in the list of speaker, we have Archbishop Emeritus Reverend Dr. Antje Jackelén, a Swedish Lutheran theologian, former Archbishop of Uppsala in the Church of Sweden. She's also a former Anglican Communion Science Commission and represented the Lutheran World Federation in international dialogues on science, ethics, and faith. With a strong academic background in systematic theology and the dialogue between science and religion, Archbishop Jackelén has been a leading voice in exploring how Christian theology engages contemporary scientific developments, including artificial intelligence, climate science, and biotechnology. She emphasizes responsible innovation, ecological sustainability, and the theological affirmation of human dignity, advocating for global cooperation between churches and scientific communities to ensure that technological progress serves justice, peace, and the flourishing creation. Thank you, Reverend, for your presence with us. The Reverend Dr. Kenneth Mtata, who is the Director of Life, Justice, and Peace at the World Council of Churches. Dr. Mtata is a Zimbabwean theologian, ecumenical leader serving as a Director for Life, Justice, and Peace in the World Council of Churches based in Geneva. He holds a doctorate in theology, has long been engaged in issues of social justice, public theology, church leadership in Africa and globally. Before joining WCC, he served in leadership roles within the Lutheran Communion and contributed to theological education and ecumenical dialogue. At the WCC, Dr. Mtata coordinates global Christian initiatives addressing human dignity, economic justice, climate change, peace building, and ethical responses to emerging global challenges. His work emphasized the role of faith communities in promoting justice, reconciliation, and sustainable peace in an interconnected world. Thank you, Dr. Mtata, for being with us. Also, we are pleased to be introducing Dr. Brian Green, PhD and the Director of Technology Ethics at the University Center and the lecturer in the School of Engineering at Santa Clara University, an American ethicist and from the Roman Catholic tradition, who specialize in the ethical implication of emerging technology, including artificial intelligence, biotechnology, space exploration, and transhumanism. Dr. Brian holds a PhD in ethics and social theory and previously studied genetics, giving him an interdisciplinary perspective that connects science, philosophy, and religion. Dr. Green is the author of Space Ethics and collaborates with international institutions such as the World Economic Forum and the Vatican. He emphasizes the role of faith tradition in guiding ethical innovation, promoting human dignity, ensuring emerging technology serve to the common good. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us. I will now pass the microphone to the Peter, who is going to moderate the session. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Father Musa, for those wonderful introductions. Welcome, everyone. It's a joy to have you with us today. Let me just start off by asking, maybe framing a question for Dr. Tegmark. As Father Stavros said, Dr. Tegmark, across our world, we're amazed at the incredible development of artificial intelligence and its myriad applications, all advertised in glowing terms about how this technology will tremendously benefit both humanity and creation. We're told there will be cures for cancer, the solution for climate change, cyber-physical systems that will revolutionize agriculture and end global hunger. And yet there's a side to the unfettered development of artificial intelligence, that being the development of highly autonomous, highly capable artificial general intelligence, that is more capable than human beings. And that is, in the last 2 to 3 years, increasingly seen as a huge existential risk for humanity. This risk is increased by the current AI development arms race that is focused on developing just this type of highly dangerous autonomous artificial general intelligence. Can you tell us about this risk, Dr. Tegmark, and what, if anything, can be done about it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. As Father Stavros so eloquently said, we oppose false oppositions. So if you look at other technologies like fire, we don't go around asking people if they're for fire or against fire. Of course, we're for fire to help feed the hungry with warm meals, and we're against fire for burning down our neighbor's house. Of course, we're for using dynamite to build tunnels and connect communities, and we're against it for terrorism. So that's a false opposition, asking, are we for technology or against the technology? The question is, do we have can we provide moral leadership to make sure that the technology is used for good, not for evil? I work as a professor here at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I'm doing AI research since many years back, and I love technology. I'm so glad I have technology in the name of my school. I believe technology is not evil and also not morally good. I want it to be a tool, and I want us to have the moral leadership to use it for good things and not for bad things. So I'm going to show you just a few slides to add a little color to what I see as the real choice here. But the key point just from the get-go is the choice we face is not the false choice, the false opposition of, are we for this technology or are we against it? We are for pro-human AI, and I am very against transhuman AI. I will explain what I mean by this. So could we have a show of hands? Who here is excited about using this technology to provide a dignified pro-human future, with AI tools that help us cure diseases and solve problems? Okay, good. Now, who is instead excited about the future AI that simply makes us all economically obsolete and simply replaces us first on the job market and then perhaps entirely? Yeah. All right, so those are the two paths that we're really choosing between here. Two quite different paths. The vast majority of Americans, in recent polling, 95% of them want the former path, the pro-human path. And this goes across the political spectrum. I call it the Bernie to Bannon coalition. And there's from faith leaders to labor union leaders and yet this is not the path that we're currently on. We have a number of companies that are racing toward the transhuman future. They are racing to see who can first replace humans on the job market and beyond with super intelligent machines.
The AI is
don't take my word for it. This is Elon Musk just the other month.
The AI is going to be in charge, to be totally frank, not humans.
If you couldn't hear it, he said the AI is going to be in charge, to be totally frank, not humans. This is not my vision for how we should preserve human dignity, build machines that are going to be in charge and abdicate human responsibility. Sam Altman has an essay I would invite you to read called The Merge, where it's basically a tribute to transhumanism about how we are supposed to build our replacement species and merge with it, and that's great. I have a 3-year-old son. I beg to disagree. Technically, when I say shouldn't talk about if we're for AI or against it, I want to make clear that there are 3 different great powers that AI can give us. High domain intelligence in something like how to drive a car, for example, or how to do cancer research. High generality, being the jack of all trades, and high autonomy, the ability to drive a robotic lawnmower or a self-driving car. And the good news is, as long as we don't put all of these 3 great powers into the same AI system, we have a lot of good ideas for how to keep it a tool And then with good regulation and other incentives, we can make sure that this is how AI is used. It's only if you put all three of these great powers into the same AI system that you make something which can replace everybody on the job market that we have no idea how to control and leads in this transhumanist direction. So this is the solution, basically. We want all these great uses, but we don't want to put so many powers in the AI that it can make us redundant. Sometimes lobbyists from companies will tell you that, oh, we have to put all these powers into the AI because otherwise we can't cure cancer or do the other wonderful things. That is patently false. And did you see my slides change here? Are you seeing a black screen now? Yes? Let me hear.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
For example, we can save over 1 million lives per year on the world's roads with AI without any superintelligence. We can save even more lives by limiting hospital deaths, democratizing healthcare with great diagnosis, developing new medical treatments, even figure out how to fold proteins, cure cancer, win the Nobel Prize. With tool AI that has only one or two of those powers in it and is very pro-human, will improve research processes with robots, reduce power consumption, make educational accessible and personalizable, transform every sector of the economy for prosperity, and even attain the sustainable development goals faster with this sort of tool AI I'm talking about. We don't need this transhumanist superintelligence for any of that stuff. Now, why are we not doing this then? Well, incentives are crucial. We try to build a society that gives incentives to people to bring out the best in us, right? Not bring out the worst in us. And unfortunately, today in America, AI is the only industry that makes things less regulated than sandwiches. If I want to open a sandwich shop here in Boston, Massachusetts, and the health inspector says, "Oh, you have 18 rats in your kitchen. I'm not going to let you sell any sandwiches yet." I could come back to him and say, "Don't worry, I'm actually not going to sell any sandwiches. I'm just going to release AI girlfriends for 11-year-olds and build super intelligence that's going to take over the world." And the poor guy from the government would then have to say, "Well, okay, fine, that's legal, as long as you promise to not sell any sandwiches." And as a result of these perverse incentives that the completely unregulated industry is getting, we can see how they, one after the other, break their own idealistic promises. Google said, "Don't be evil." Then they dropped the slogan, and then they dropped the pledge not to use this for weapons or surveillance. OpenAI, very idealistic goals, and look what happened. And just the other week, turned out they had dropped the word safety from their mission statement. Anthropic said, we don't trust OpenAI, but we are going to be the good guys. You're so idealistic. And then they weren't built what was used for the first ever big AI cyber attack. And just yesterday, big breaking news, they abandoned their biggest safety pledge that they had made. And XAI also started out with very noble goals. And look what's happening. It's so to summarize the big picture here without slides, I just want to say again, the question is not if we're for AI or against AI. AI will become the most powerful technology we humans have ever built. And with good moral leadership, we can give incentives to the companies and everybody else to use this for good things, for curing cancer and doing so many other amazing things. But if we continue, but that's not the path we're on. We're right now in this very perverse situation where it's the only completely unregulated industry in America, really bringing out the worst in the companies and in the people. But I'm an optimist, and that thanks to people like you speaking up, we can actually change course and build really not transhuman AI, but pro-human AI that brings out the best, helps bring out the best in us, and creates a truly inspiring and dignified future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tegmark. You have both inspired us about the potential of certain forms of AI, tool AI, and warned us about some of the dangers current. Our next speaker is Archbishop Emeritus Dr. Antje Jackelén. Archbishop, as a systematic theologian from the Lutheran tradition, you've spent a lifetime thinking about the interfaith between faith and science. For many years, you taught at LST in Chicago, and were responsible for the Zygon Center. Recently, you completed a term as a member of the Anglican Communion Science Commission. I was thinking about your colleague, American Lutheran systematic theologian Phil Hefner, talking about the creators creating a co-creator, by which I think, I'll say that again, the creators creating a co-creator, by which I think he meant God's created humanity making a co-creator, artificial intelligence. But we're at a point where it seems possible now that the co-creator that humans can build, this autonomous artificial general intelligence, has the potential no longer to need other co-creators like humanity. How do you understand this fraught time in the history of humanity's development of technology, and how might faith traditions best respond? Archbishop.
Thank you, Peter, for that introduction. Well, I go at this in sort of three steps, three parts. And the first one is how technological development can be a sign of the realm of God. When John the Baptist was in prison and heard stories about what Jesus was doing, he sent his disciples to ask, "Are you the one, the Messiah, to come, or are we to wait for another?" And Jesus answered, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." This can be read as technology that helps the blind to see, the lame to walk, and the deaf to hear can be a mark of the Messianic age. So based on the conviction that the Creator has endowed humans with a rationality that seeks to explore, understand, and improve, general skepticism or hostility towards technological progress is not a Christian virtue. In principle, theologians should welcome technological progress that alleviates suffering. But then, technological progress is not morally neutral. Remember that the poor have good news brought to them is the climax of Jesus' description of the Messianic age. It prompts us to ask three simple but pivotal questions. Who benefits from a certain technological achievement in the short run, and who in the long run? Who is paying the price for this achievement, short term and long term? And what does it mean for the little ones, children, people pushed to the margins, those whom Jesus put center stage? With AI and AGI, we face justice issues between global south and global north, with the north driving development and dominating access. Issues of gender justice, with women and girls having less access to digital tools and to less advanced tools, while running a higher risk of violation than men and boys. Issues of racial bias, misuse of religion, as well as cross-cutting issues for all societies, because access to technology is not synonymous to technology working well for people. If governments focus on positive GDP development, yet miss out on forms of distribution that allow not only the wealthiest, but all people to flourish, middle classes that usually are the backbone in societies will disappear. Anger, anxiety will reach levels that destroy social, economic, and cultural fabrics. Coming to the second Part B, how the development of AI entails a crisis for humanity. AI, let alone AGI, represents the fourth narcissistic insult to humanity. In 1917, Sigmund Freud described 3 narcissistic insults. These were moments of scientific breakthrough that showed humans that we are not as special as we once believed. The first came with Nicolaus Copernicus and the heliocentric worldview that destroyed the human illusion of being the center of the universe. It was followed by 2 more. The loss of humanity's position as the crown of creation through Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, and the loss of sovereignty over our own selves through the discovery of the power of the unconscious. And this latter was Freud's own work, and according to him, the toughest one of all. Today, Freud would have been prompted to add a 4th. Namely, the cosmological, biological, and psychological insults are now followed by an intellectual insult. While humanity has coped quite well with the first 3, we don't know how we will do this time around. As a consequence, wavering between techno-messianism, AI will save us and the planet, and techno-dystopia, AI is the end of humanity, is an understandable reaction to the intellectual insult. Yet, uncritical embrace is socially irresponsible, and panic often leads to irrational actions or apathy. By all means, the development of AGI entails a crisis for humanity. Crisis understood as a critical point where different directions can be taken. And crises of such scope require extensive levels of discernment. Now, discernment is often hampered by uncertainty about where processes of discernment should take place, how they should be coordinated, and how their implementation can be ensured. Also, experienced usefulness of AI systems is likely to trump philosophical, theological, and moral questions, and add to this the power of economic and military interests, or the false incentives, and you get a potentially very harmful spin. As long as collective human intelligence can judge the plausibility of AI output, the insult can be handled. If that capacity gets lost, we are in real trouble. Now to the third part. How can faith communities respond? 3 points there. First point, educate ourselves. Don't leave questions about the future of humanity to secular actors only. They may lack the cultural integrity, the spiritual depth, and the moral strength that faith communities should be able to offer. Make the best to technological and theological knowledge accessible, and provide spaces for conversations about the real big questions where all sectors of society can cooperate. It is, after all, in civil society that existential questions are asked and answers sought, not only in calculations about power and economics, or in legal and technical intricacies, but also in the cultural, philosophical, and theological sources from which humanity has drawn orientation over centuries. Second point, bring theological anthropology up to speed. What does it mean for humans to be created in the image of God and at the same time to be an earthling formed from dust and endowed with divine spirit? To be created co-creator and a co-creature in a biosphere that is under serious stress. how do we express the complexity of human intelligence as physically embodied and culturally embedded? What does it mean that vulnerability, imperfection, and mortality are central to humans, but strictly avoided by AI? The hallmarks of Western modernity, individualism, consumerism, and secularism, will not suffice. Instead, human qualities such as relationality, transcendence, fallibility, and responsibility are key. Third point, draw public attention to issues of democracy and justice. AI development is quicker than adaptation of social and legal systems, especially when the law follows democratic principles, as it should. In the haze of this dilemma, transparency gets lost, lines of responsibility become blurred, and consequences strike unexpectedly and unevenly. Social unrest may arise. Without critical humanistic reflection, AI, let alone AGI, will fail to contribute to a good society for all. In conclusion, faith communities can be prophetic, that is, see and give voice to those who do not benefit from current developments. Diaconal, that is, listen, support, and help. Ethical, that is, initiate and take part in public discernment about right and wrong. And theological, that is, contribute their expertise and raise questions that are rarely being asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Archbishop Jackelén, for inspiring us and helping us to think theologically about these very difficult issues. Our next speaker will be Reverend Dr. Kenneth Mtata. Dr. Mtata, as an African ecumenical theologian and senior leader within the World Council of Churches, how has the World Council of Churches historically engaged global ethical challenges arising from technological change? And how might the World Council of Churches respond today to the risks posed by highly autonomous artificial general intelligence, AGI, particularly in the context of an escalating arms race between the United States and China? Reverend Dr. Mtata.
Thank you very much. I think we have already heard that the ecumenical movement has been dealing and engaging with technological developments for quite a long time. And the starting point, as we have just heard, has been that technology is not morally neutral. Long before artificial intelligence, churches were already asking what happens when human power outpaces human wisdom. In Christian theology, here power would refer to our growing capacity to shape the world through science, industry, and now computation, while wisdom refers to our moral and spiritual capacity to guide that power towards justice, dignity, and peace. This concern is deeply rooted in the history of the ecumenical movement. After the Edinburgh Missionary Conference in 1910, two distinctive streams emerged: the faith and order, focusing on unity in doctrine and ministry, and life and work, focusing on the church's common ethical witness in society. At the Stockholm Conference on Life and Work in 1925, church leaders confronted the disruptive effects of industrialization. Machines were viewed to be reshaping labor, cities, and economic systems. The central concern was not whether machines were good or bad, but whether the technological and the economic system they produced were serving human dignity. The first assembly, when it took place in Amsterdam in 1948, the world had just witnessed a devastating experience of the atomic bomb. The assembly concluded that the vice of society did not lie in science itself, but in the unresolved problem of power and its control. Technological capacity without moral responsibility could threaten the whole human civilization. A very important conference in 1966 on church and society, held here in Geneva by the World Council of Churches, called our time a moment of technical revolutions. Automation and early computing were already transforming economies. And the insight that emerged from the conference was that technology reflects and magnifies power imbalances in society. It reproduces these power imbalances. And our engagement as the WCC with the MIT in 1979, a historic conference was held, which affirmed the theological and scientific conversation and dialogue, which lifted up the necessity for this ongoing dialogue as necessary for the church to meaningfully participate in technological development. More recently, in the statements issued by the WCC on artificial intelligence, and especially related to lethal autonomous weapons, the WCC has affirmed that AI must remain under meaningful human control and be governed through transparent and accountable international frameworks, and be developed in ways that uphold human dignity, justice, peace, and integrity of creation. When we turn to artificial intelligence, especially AGI, we are therefore extending a consistent moral trajectory as demonstrated in the story of the ecumenical movement's reflection on ethical questions. But when we come to these new developments, new moral questions emerge, and I just want to highlight 5 of them that have been raised in our time. First is the one on human dignity and moral agency. Christian faith affirms that human beings are created in the image of God. This means we are responsible moral agents, accountable for decisions that affect life and death. In highly autonomous systems, which make consequential decisions in warfare, healthcare, governance, or finance, the question is who bears responsibility? Scientists speak of the black box problem, where even developers cannot fully explain how complex systems reach certain conclusions. When autonomy is combined with opacity, accountability becomes fragile. So the core theological claim remains: responsibility cannot be automated. The second area is that of militarization and machine speed conflict. AI systems operate at speeds far beyond human cognition. In military settings, this may increase efficiency, but it may also accelerate escalation. In advanced autonomous systems, if advanced autonomous systems are integrated into command structures, responses to perceived threats could occur at machine speed, reducing space for human deliberation. We know that peace depends on moral judgment, restraint, and time for reflection. But automation risks compressing that space. The third concern relates to structural injustices and bias. Current AI systems often reproduce racial and social biases because they are trained on historically unjust data. AI does not create unjust systems itself from nothing. It amplifies existing inequalities. Without intentional design for justice, discrimination can become faster, less visible, and more difficult to challenge. Last but not least of these challenges is the concentration of power and global inequality. AI development is concentrated in a small number of corporations and powerful states. Infrastructure, data, and computing capacity are unevenly distributed. From an African and global South perspective, this raises pressing concerns. Who sets the standards? Whose values are encoded? Who benefits economically? Technology always redistributes power and often consolidates it. There is an important consideration for our time, which is the greatest concern, is that of ecological responsibility. AI systems require immense computational energy and material resources. Data centers consume vast electricity. Hardware production depends on mineral extraction, sometimes even from fragile ecosystems. You can imagine a company from Europe driving its 4x4 in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the blood of women and children who are running away from a war. And these companies will not be interested in resolving the conflict because for them, it allows them to access these important minerals for their technological development. Digital revolution is not immaterial. It has a carbon footprint and a human life footprint, environmental consequences that we must bear as we reflect on these matters together. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Mtata, for giving us much to think about how the World Council of Churches has engaged with technology over the years and how we need to think about the current technological challenges around artificial general intelligence. Our next speaker, Dr. Brian Green. Dr. Green, we are clearly living in challenging times. Challenging politically because of the AI development arms race between the US and China, challenging globally because of the current weakening of international multilateral institutions, challenging because of the rapid rate of development and lack of national and international regulatory frameworks for highly autonomous, highly capable artificial general intelligence. Dr. Green, as an American Roman Catholic ethicist, the director of a technological ethics program at a university center, and someone who's worked closely both with the Vatican and at the World Economic Forum in teaching and thinking about the uses and risks in the development of highly autonomous, highly capable AGI, how can global faith traditions respond in this challenging time? Dr. Green.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And I'm happy to be able to share what I can on this subject. Let's see. My slides. There we go. All right. So first I have to say is I'm not speaking on behalf of the Vatican. I'm also not speaking on behalf of the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics or Santa Clara University. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself. There's a movie that was put out in the 1980s called A Fish Called Wanda, where the character of Otto makes a foolish mistake and has been called an ape by Wanda and defends his sophistication by appealing to his penchant for reading philosophy, declaring apes don't read philosophy. And Wanda retorts, yes, they do, Otto, they just don't understand it. When we're talking about organizations, we might also ask the same question. We might ask, organizations don't do philosophy. And of course, the response is, yes, they do, Otto, they just don't understand it. And so I've been working a lot with organizations that do philosophy. Some of them recognize that they're doing philosophy, and others of them do not recognize that they're doing philosophy. So with the World Economic Forum, for example, I worked on 3 different case studies with Microsoft, IBM, and Salesforce. Each one of them were thinking about the ethical implications of AI in their organizations. How did they want to be thinking about artificial intelligence? How did they want to make sure that they were developing safe products, reliable products, products that protected privacy. And so we published this series of case studies between 2021 and about 2022. This series was going to continue. However, the appetite in the industry actually declined in 2023, and so the series was stopped. And not all of the things that we published in this series are currently still ongoing. Things change in the tech industry continuously, and so people are sometimes doing philosophy, and they will admit that they are, and perhaps even are doing it well, but then they might lay off the people in their organization that are actually doing that, and thus the organization is left doing philosophy, quote unquote, but not actually perhaps understanding it, or not actually, caring what the impact is of the choices that they make. All right. Another organization that does philosophy, and is luckily an organization where almost everyone has the requirement of having learned philosophy at some point, would be the Catholic Church. Pope Francis was extremely interested in artificial intelligence as a subject. He was interested in it starting around 2015, so quite early. The Vatican has multiple initiatives on AI. There's the Pontifical Academy for Life, the Dicastery for Culture and Education that I work with, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, the Minerva Dialogues, which are specifically with technology leadership, and more initiatives in that, more things happening at the Vatican every week. Some of them are official, some of them are not. And I'll just say that a lot of people like to do things next to the Vatican and say that it's associated with the Vatican in some way, but really they're just kind of hanging out next door. So always be a little careful when you hear that something's happening in Rome. It may or may not actually be something that the church, the Catholic Church, is interested in. So I worked with the Dicastery for Culture and Education for about 7 years on two of its main initiatives on artificial intelligence. The first one is about the operationalization of ethical thinking in the tech industry. And the second is on the academic study of AI and its impact on individuals and society. I'll just talk a little bit about those. We put out 3 books on the subject. Ethics in the Age of Disruptive Technology is a handbook. It's a manual for how to actually implement ethical thinking into organizations. We took the best things that we learned from working with those World Economic Forum case studies, with all the work that the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics, where I work, has been studying for the last 30 years, and everything else that we could find, we combined it all into one handbook on what everyone is doing. It talks about how to implement these things in a corporation, in a corporate setting. It has principles, it has implementation stages going all the way from getting the leadership on board, because you'd be surprised on how flexible leadership can be in their ethical commitment. We can put it that way. That can be a positive thing, but it can also, of course, be a negative thing. All right, so that was published in 2023. It's still one of the, I'm one of the co-authors, so I think it's a good book. I think it's still one of the best books on the actual implementation of ethical thinking in an organization. Also, with the AI research group, the more academic side of things, we published 2 books, Encountering Artificial Intelligence in 2023, and then just a couple months ago, Reclaiming Human Agency in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Encountering AI is a very broad book. It gets into a lot of the subjects that were then later published in Antiqua et Nova. So it's kind of a foundational document in that way. These are not official Vatican documents. These are very much research studies that academics put out, but then provide thinking that other people can look at and react to. The Reclaiming Human Agency book is also pretty significant in that it got into these issues of, do we actually get to make choices in the future, or is AI going to make all the choices for us, which have become very live questions right now. I mentioned Antiqua et Nova, that came out in January of last year, and basically boils all these, not just ideas, of course, from this group, but from across the Catholic tradition, and kind of condenses them down into about 10,000 words, a little bit more than 10,000 words, so that folks can get just like, what is the distilled perspective on these issues? All right. And of course, Pope Leo has been very interested in AI. He's produced a lot of significant statements on this, but one of his things that I like is just this quote from 2025. I'm not going to read it out. You can take a look at it. But the basic idea is that, the church is very interested in these issues, and we have to make sure that AI is actually doing something good in the world and not something bad. All right. Now, China and the Catholic Church. China, of course, between the United States and China are kind of the two countries who are really pioneering these frontier models and have really on the Chinese government has made an explicit dedication or explicit commitment towards making sure that it has the most powerful AI in the world. In the United States government has made sort of commitments, but mostly it's just private and industry fighting with each other. The Catholic Church does not have relations with China because Catholicism and communism don't get along. So there's no diplomatic relations formally, but there are levels of individual connection between, say, Catholic universities and scholars who are in China, for example. And so there have been meetings of people who study Chinese philosophy and work on AI. The prospects for improvement are not that good, actually. AI should be something that really unites humanity for the sake of its own well-being, but we can't get out of our own way. And so for faith leaders, without China, there's only one side of the race that can be attended to. And this is actually, I think, a lot of good opportunity for faith leaders to do something in relation to AI in the rest of the world that's not China. We have a very exponentially growing technology here. What we can do is we need to really accelerate the social conversation on AI. We need to have a 10x increase in thinking on AI. We also need a 10x increase in doing on AI, where we are actually not just regulating AI, but using AI for positive purposes to make sure that it's actually being used well in society. There's a lot that we can do with this technology. It's a very empowering technology, but it has to actually be used for that. And we can't look to other people to do the work. We have to actually do the work ourselves. We need to continuously try to engage China as much as we can, even if the likelihood of success may be small. And of course, we can work with individuals who are from China, students, professors, business people, and others as individuals, and try to work with them in that way. Thank you very much.
Dr. Green, thank you very much for inspiring us with the already impressive work done by the Vatican and the Dicastery for Culture and Education and your own contributions to that. All panelists, thank you very much for your enlightening presentations today. They have been stimulating, thought-provoking, challenging. We now have perhaps we're going to have to shorten our time for questions among the panelists, maybe time for 2 or at most 3 questions between the panelists. Then we'll go to questions from attendees. I see attendees are already putting questions into the question and answer, and other attendees are voting on which questions are most important to them. If you could please do that, we will get there shortly. I would just now ask the panelists, are there any questions of clarification or for further commentary you would like to ask of each other?
I'll just ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Reverend Kenneth.
Please, Kenneth, and then Brian.
Yes, I wanted to ask what is the current state of relationship between the academy, the industry, and other morally generating institutions or entities like the church. For those who are teaching, is there any deliberate process to make sure that there is an ongoing conversation between those who are morally conscious and those who are producing the technology for profit and those who are teaching and forming the next generation of thinkers?
I can comment briefly on that. It's a difficult relationship because these companies come into our universities with so much money that they manage to vacuum clean away many of our professors and also many of the students who, particularly the ones maybe who have thought slightly less about the morality of things. And by also flooding universities with research grants, just as we saw Facebook and other companies did earlier with social media, they effectively silence a lot of academics who feel that if they speak up too much against the companies, they're going to lose their grant funding.
And I'll just to build on that, and go back to a fish called Wanda. These organizations are doing philosophy. They're making ethical stands. They're impacting the world in ethically significant ways, but they often do their best not to see what's happening, and or they're just completely oblivious to it. They don't need to cover their eyes because they're just not looking. And so there's an opportunity for academia to step up and provide some moral leadership here. But on the other hand, the technology is often moving so fast that you're fighting something that happened a year ago rather than fighting something that's happening right now. And this constant lag in terms of what you actually can either argue against or compete against or act or do something towards is constantly almost a rearguard action because the field is constantly moving ahead so quickly. We really need to pick up the pace on this side of things, which means we need more people talking more about this. A 10x increase is kind of the minimum. We need to really pick up the pace as civil society organizations.
Thank you. Thank you all. Maybe I'll throw a question in. British Canadian Nobel laureate Geoffrey Hinton has, in thinking about this issue, talking about this issue, he's suggested that there are very few examples in the universe where a lower intelligence can control a higher intelligence, something that humanity may be facing in the future with artificial general intelligence. One example that he suggests is that of how a baby controls its mother, right? Of course, being maternal often entails significant self-sacrifice to raise a child. So he posits, how do we get ourselves away from thinking about artificial general intelligence as our overachieving executive assistant and think about it, developing it more as a mother to humanity? Does anyone have any comments about that, how that might be possible?
I have a comment on whether it's desirable. I think I feel that we humans are the stewards of this earth, and it's very important that we own up to this moral responsibility and don't succumb to this temptation to just delegate it to some digital mother. I feel that this can often be used as an excuse for us not to be responsible. I think it's a very important moral principle to me personally is that we should never be allowed to use AI to absolve us of moral responsibility. If a human uses an AI to do something, it should be the human who is responsible for harm caused. They can't just blame the machine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree there. I mean, to regress into a kind of childhood state or to infantilize ourselves cannot be the direction to take. I also tend to think that, I mean, of course, we should fear the potentially evil developments that we are facing, but we should also be fearful of ourselves so that we not give up on the fruits of the Enlightenment that have been quite costly for humanity to achieve. And I think we should really hold on to those because there are some very valid tools to proceed and to claim this moral responsibility and moral agency that we need, not least in pursuit of justice and these power questions that Kenneth Mtata talked about.
Thank you, Brian. Did you want to get
to just build on that and to go back to what Reverend Dr. Antje was saying earlier with theological anthropology, I think is an enormously important issue here. We're not supposed to be infants. We are supposed to be the adults on this planet. We are not supposed to be delegating our responsibility to other entities, whatever they might be. We're supposed to be stepping up and actually becoming the best people that we can be. This is our job. This is our work here to actually do this kind of thing, to make sure that we are making the world a better place. If we're not doing that and we're trying to delegate it to something else, then we are fundamentally neglecting or just, not fulfilling what we're supposed to be doing as human beings. And this, from an anthropological and theological perspective, just it's a non-starter. It's not something that should be happening. And if it does start happening, then we need to figure out how to fight against it more thoroughly than we already are.
Thank you, panelists, for your response to that question. I think we should now go to questions from attendees. Again, to attendees, if you have questions you would like to ask the panelists, please type them into the question and answer. The first question from Terry Miller. Right now, from its creation, development, funding, and ownership, AI is already not a neutral technology. It's a for-profit technology in the hands of rich, white, male, super minority. How can we contribute to transforming AI into a public interest technology, a public service for the common good, promoting human dignity and just community? Anyone want to begin to address that?
Quick comment, just to add some optimism here. An obvious first step is actually very easy. We used to have unregulated pharma, and then we got companies selling thalidomide, causing horrible birth defects. We've done this. We've had a similar challenge in all industries, really, that make powerful stuff, from asbestos to smoking. And the solution, the first step has always been the same. Simply have legislated binding safety standards. Before you can sell a sandwich, the health inspector has to check your kitchen. Before you can release a medicine, you have to pass your clinical trial. And the moment we start treating AI companies like this as well, where they have to demonstrate that the benefits outweigh the harms before they release, we'll see a sea change. They will have incentives now to race to the top rather than race to the bottom. They will start spending much more of their talent and money on making sure that these are actually products that are net beneficial for society, because that's how they're going to get rich. So the only reason it hasn't happened yet is because legislation and regulation tends to go slower than the technology does. But we've done this before in other industries, and we can absolutely do it again for AI.
My concern, of course, is if this technology enables those who are in power to retain power, they don't have the incentive to make those rules. So for me, that's where the conundrum is, because normally those who have political power make policies so that they can make the population happy so that they can acquire power. But if they can now acquire this power without the will of the people, this creates a completely new challenge for policy making.
That's exactly right. But there's some hope here again, because the super intelligence that these companies are racing to build would not only take away the power of the global south and take away the power of most people, it would ultimately even take away the power of the presidents and the most powerful people in the world, because the transhumanist vision, right, is that the machines are going to have the power in the end. And it's a painful truth that many politicians haven't realized yet, but quite obvious, speaking from my technical expertise, that we're closer to building superintelligence than we are to figuring out how to control it. So anyone who has power today will lose it if we just go into this crazy transhumanist race.
The problem is a little bit with your analogy with the pharma. How much damage does there have to be before people realize that we need the regulation? And I know the discourse in Europe has been, in Europe, the EU is going for regulation of responsible and trustworthy AI, but the US is going for the business model and see they're ahead, and China is going for the surveillance model, and the EU is left behind. I don't want to see it that way, but I mean, this illustrates the risk that the power still rests with, in a sense, the wrong people.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. This is the most effective talking point of the tech lobbyists in Brussels. And there are more tech lobbyists there than there are pharma lobbyists and military lobbyists and oil lobbyists combined. But it's, of course, completely false what they're saying, because Europe fell behind America and China on AI long before the EU AI Act even came into force. There are other reasons, but they use it. And in America, similarly, they make another false argument. They say, but China. Even though it's quite obvious that the Chinese Communist Party really likes control and would never tolerate some tech company getting AI so powerful that it could overthrow the Chinese government. So the Chinese have actually started regulating AI much more than America. Um, so these are talking points. It's important to not get distracted by what the lobbyists are saying, but what the actual facts are. And I agree with you. I really hope that we can start regulating AI without having to go through a real tragedy like thalidomide, which left over 100,000 babies, born without arms or legs. And I think this last 4 months in America is the first time there has been something really horrible enough happening that it's shifting people's perception. I'm referring to this large string of suicides where chatbots and AI girlfriends convince teenagers to kill themselves. I spoke with a mother, Megan Garcia, a few weeks ago, who had that happen to her son, and this is the first time that I've seen politicians all across the political spectrum here, including 95% of the voters, saying that something must be done. I'm hoping we don't have to wait for bigger disasters to start regulating.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in here with another question from our attendees. This one from Dr. Morales in Mexico. A question about how can we ethically and theologically motivate open culture, open science, open data, open source, etc., to advance towards sovereignty of AI technologies in the global south. So a question about sovereignty of technology to the global south, a distribution of the technology, because of course, all the patents are or the vast majority of patents are being filed either in China or the United States these days. Someone like to handle that question? Is open culture going to be helpful at this moment in time? Perhaps is a different way to ask the question.
So I can feel the tension between openness and regulating. I don't know how that can be dealt with. Yesterday my government just refused the health funding proposal from the United States of America because it addresses questions related to data collection, open data collection, and it's not the only country. Many countries in Africa who are receiving health support at the moment must also agree on some levels of data collection. And so the question is, how much can we open up the continent, for example, for data collection in exchange to participate in this AI development? I don't have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer either, but I was thinking in terms of openness and connections when Brian Greene was talking about the relationships with China and China's attempts at building this sort of ecological civilization, or whether you, Brian, would see that as a point of connection where even the more questions about AI could be lodged in this discourse.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there are certainly places where China and the world can cooperate with each other. And China's interest in protecting the environment is certainly one location where that can happen. But the difficulties are also very real. So yeah, I mean, this may be an opportunity for Europe and for other places in the world to really step in and try to facilitate things going on with China. China and the United States are obviously not getting along very well right now. And so there are opportunities, I think, for third parties to step up and do things that actually could have a beneficial effect on the world if they can act as power brokers or act diplomatically speaking to try to get better outcomes.
Thank you. Another question. We've had several questions actually about growing AI-empowered misinformation and disinformation in the world. This question asks, how can we begin to control growing manipulations of theology already permeating African space by AI contents? That's a great question because, of course, there are now AI chatbots. You can speak to Jesus directly. You can speak to Buddha. You can speak to Lucifer should you choose to do that. So one of the reasons for having this webinar is to look for moral leadership, but the grounds of moral leadership is being polluted by this artificial intelligence, misinformation, disinformation. Any thoughts about that from our panelists?
I would just say that once again, this is where awareness and education become really important. Anytime you're using an app to talk to Jesus, you're not talking to Jesus, you're talking to a corporation that's using an app to make money off of making you feel like you're talking to Jesus. So a healthy skepticism is always useful here. You know, if you want to have a religious, I mean, if you want to deepen your religion and spirituality, go to the sources where these things come from. I mean, go read the Bible, read philosophical and theological texts that engage these things. This is not necessarily a good opportunity to have things mediated by AI, although AI can be wonderful. I mean, there are opportunities there, but we need to start with skepticism and recognize that these corporations don't necessarily have the best interests of anybody in mind other than themselves.
Yeah, my concern is how much freedom do people have to make those decisions? Because if some of the prompts for you to move towards certain direction of interaction is predetermined by certain algorithms, we may at one point, yes, be able to be in control, but the addictive nature of how these algorithms suck people in, especially when they are in vulnerable situations. I'm not sure if we can give so much responsibility to people who are in vulnerable situations who are offered easy solutions. So I agree that one way is for us to empower people through education, but I also see that the manipulative nature of these algorithms, which has already been demonstrated, I think, in many electoral processes, for example. They are so powerful and seductive and also addictive that individual responsibility may not be enough.
Any final comments on this question from our panelists? Okay, then I'll maybe use one final question to jump us into our concluding remarks. 1 minute for each panelist to share next thoughts about the future, next steps in this conversation, how the faith traditions of the world can respond. So the question is, AI regulation is currently a hot topic in the US. What can religious organizations do right now to affect the conversation and the outcome? I'll say that again. AI regulation is currently a hot topic in the US. What can religious organizations do right now to affect the conversation and the outcome? We'll go in the same order that we started the presentations. Dr. Tegmark, would you like to begin? Next steps.
I would very much welcome this religious organization bringing these topics up from the pulpit, and when people come to service to talk about this. I think it's something that everybody cares about, is interested in, and one of the things that me and my colleagues working there would love to help with is just providing more helpful educational materials so that everybody who's doing a sermon, feels empowered to talk about these things and feel confident that what they're saying makes sense. I think it's super empowering for everybody who goes to church to feel validated and taking seriously these issues, right? And not think that this is something that they aren't entitled to think about and that has to be decided by some nerds who never show up in church.
Thank you, Dr. Tegmark. Archbishop Emerita, Dr. Jackelén, your final thoughts, next steps.
Yeah, thank you. Apart from what I said, educate ourselves, bring anthropology up to speed, and draw public attention to issues of democracy and justice. I would say it's really much bigger than the question about whether we can use AI applications to boost our preparations of sermons. We need to lift up the discussion to that higher level that we have been touching on today. And that means to be realistic. We must not divinize algorithms nor demonize them, because then we would be like engaging in a dance, right? The golden calf, that is are the algorithms. So to stay realistic, and in that, beyond, there are many reasons not to be optimistic, but there are always reasons for faith communities to cultivate hope, which entails to be realistic about the difficulties, to relate constructively both to our power as human beings, but also to our vulnerability, and to choose the path of courage.
Thank you, Archbishop Jackelén. Reverend Dr. Mtata, your final thoughts.
Yes. For me, when we are talking about regulation or making laws, I would think that these laws must have two characters. The first character is that the laws must protect the most vulnerable people in whatever state they are in. We must insist that these laws protect the most vulnerable. But the second character is that they must minimize the power of those who are powerful. In other words, they must regulate those who are making profits, those who are acquiring power, and those who are socially advantaged already. And that's why I think this lawmaking process becomes very difficult, because normally those who have power will want to make sure that these laws are strengthening their power. But I would also want to emphasize what Archbishop Antje has said. The greatest form of empowering our congregants and our congregations is to make sure that they are familiar, they are aware, they know about this technology. They must embrace the utility of this technology, but also know the dangers. So I think while lawmaking addresses the structural questions, this education empowers the individuals to be able to deal with the dangers.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Mtata. Dr. Green.
Yeah, I would emphasize and reiterate everything that's been said previously. Those are all extraordinarily important things to be thinking about. Just to add something that might be in addition, talk to politicians, press, if you have a congressperson or a representative or a member of parliament or whoever it may be, start pushing on those people to actually do something. In the United States, there's been a very strong fight between the states and the federal government right now. The states, I think, are going to gain the upper hand at some point. The federal government has to cave in on this issue. They can't just let AI have free reign over everything. And there are a couple of particular issues that I think are really worth pushing on, not only from the political perspective, but also from the perspective of churches. Just talk about this in church. The suicide issue with AI-induced suicide is a really big risk that's happening right now. And it's something that almost everyone can agree is terrible. We do not want to have AIs either helping or convincing people to commit suicide, especially vulnerable people and especially children, which we've seen some terrible examples of. Also, the phenomenon of AI friends and AI boyfriends and girlfriends is something where you hear about it and you say, what is this even happening? What is going on here? And yet there are tens of millions of users of AI boyfriend and girlfriend apps, and it's very bad for society, to say the least. These are things that people need to be made aware of, and then when they hear about them, hopefully will actually act on in some way. There are a lot of opportunities out there for a lot of good to happen, but we need to know what the problems are so that we can then propose the solutions to those problems. and we need to be fast.
Dr. Green, thank you for your comments and for your thoughts for the future. Panelists, it's been an engaging, powerful, stimulating conversation. Thank you to each one of you for your presence today. I'm going to turn over now to my co-chair, Father Musa, for final thank yous and last instructions to our attendees. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Peter. I would like also, as we conclude this webinar, I would like to thank all our 4 panelists for their thoughtful reflections and on next steps, the important conversation. Sincere thanks to Dr. Max Tegmark, Archbishop Emeritus Rev. Dr. Antje Jackelén, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Mtata, and Dr. Brian Green. Thank you very much for your precious participations and your valuable time. Thank you for the ideas and the thoughts that you shared today. Thank also Reverend Dr. Stavros Kofinas for his participation and insights, as well as I thank my Reverend Dr. Peter Kunnert for moderating this time, this webinar, and keeping it in the good timing, and also for the preparation of this webinar. We also thank the support team, especially Dr. Michael Batterley, our project officer of the Faith and Science Working Group at the World Council of Churches, Mr. Walter Muniz and Mr. Grégoire de Fombelle, the communication officers, for making this possible. And I would like to encourage you, if you would like to support the work of the Faith and Science Working Group, please consider donating to the World Council of Churches or the Canadian Council of Churches. Michael will highlight donations links in the chat. Let me, if you'd like, to close with a brief blessing. May God, our mind, clear our minds, inspire our heart, and strengthen our commitment to serve humanity with compassion, justice, and care for all his creation. In the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you all, and we may all go in peace now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.